Marrying James was a dream come true. He was everything I ever wanted, kind, thoughtful, and endlessly charming. Our wedding day was perfect, and our honeymoon was a blissful escape into a world of love and promise. But soon after we returned home, things began to change. It started with small things. James, who used to be so attentive, began forgetting little details about our life together. He'd miss anniversaries, or seem confused when I mentioned past conversations. At first, I attributed it to stress from his new job, but the inconsistencies grew more troubling. He'd mention memories we never shared, or places we'd never been. I started to feel like I was living with a stranger. One night, as we lay in bed, I brought it up. James, do you remember our first date? He looked at me, his expression blank for a moment before he forced a smile. Of course, Liz. We went to that Italian place downtown. My heart sank. No, James. We went to the jazz club by the river. His face twitched, and he quickly covered with a laugh. Oh, right. Silly me. Must have been thinking of somewhere else. It was a simple mistake, but it was the culmination of many similar moments that left me feeling uneasy. The man lying next to me wasn't the James I married. Things escalated when I found an old photo album in the attic while cleaning. It was dusty and worn, filled with pictures of James and another man, someone who looked exactly like him. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages. There, on the back of one photo, was a name, Thomas. James, I called, descending the attic stairs with the album in hand. Who is Thomas? He looked up from his book, his face instantly darkening. Where did you find that? In the attic, I said, holding the album out. You never mentioned you had a twin. He stood, his expression unreadable. It's not something I like to talk about. Why not? He took the album from me, his grip tight. Because he's dead. He died years ago. I didn't believe him. There was a coldness in his voice, a finality that felt rehearsed. The unease I'd been feeling twisted into fear, but I pushed it aside, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. Over the next few weeks, James' behavior grew more erratic. He'd disappear for hours without explanation, and when he was home, he'd be brooding and secretive. One night, after he stormed out following a particularly heated argument, I decided to search the house for answers. I started in the attic, but found nothing more than old boxes and forgotten trinkets. Next, I moved to the basement, a place we rarely visited. As I descended the creaky wooden stairs, a foul odor hit me, making my stomach churn. The basement was dimly lit, and the air was thick with dampness. In the far corner, hidden behind a stack of old furniture, I found a door I'd never noticed before. It was locked, but with enough force, I managed to break it open. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. There, chained to the wall, was James. His clothes were tattered, his body thin and bruised. He looked up as the door creaked open, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. Liz, he croaked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I rushed to his side, my heart pounding in my chest. James, oh my God, what happened? That's Thomas, he gasped. He's been posing as me. He locked me down here and took my place. I struggled with the chains, my hands shaking. We have to get you out of here. Just then, I heard the basement door creak open and footsteps descending the stairs. My blood turned to ice. I turned to see Thomas standing there, his face a mask of rage. You shouldn't have come down here, Liz, he said, his voice eerily calm. I grabbed a nearby metal rod and swung it at him. He dodged easily, grabbing my wrist and wrenching the rod from my hand. You've ruined everything, he snarled. James struggled against his chains, shouting for me to run, but I couldn't leave him. I kicked Thomas, sending him stumbling back, and quickly turned to the chains, my fingers fumbling with the locks. Hurry, James urged, his voice desperate. Thomas recovered quickly, lunging at me again, but this time I was ready. I dodged his grasp and slammed the metal rod against his head with all my strength. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious. I managed to free James, and we staggered up the stairs, our limbs heavy with exhaustion and fear. We didn't stop running until we reached the neighbor's house and called the police. The authorities arrived quickly and took Thomas into custody. It turned out he had a long history of mental illness and jealousy towards James. He had faked his own death only to return years later to take over his brother's life. James was weak, but alive, and with time, he regained his strength. The ordeal left deep scars, but it also brought us closer together. We moved to a new town, far from the memories of that old house and the horrors we'd endured. 10 years later, we found ourselves in a hospital room, the sterile scent mingling with the overwhelming joy of new life. I lay exhausted, but ecstatic, holding our newborn son in my arms, while James stood beside me, his eyes soft with love. We discussed names, tossing around options with laughter and warmth. Then, James looked down at our baby, his expression shifting subtly. "How about Thomas?" he suggested, his smile stretching into something unworldly, something that sent a chill down my spine. The room seemed to darken, and the echoes of the past crept back, reminding me that some nightmares never truly end.